the book Joy on Purpose, it's been out for a little while now, and I got word from someone who has been struggling to know where to start. It's kind of overwhelming, he says. Well, that may or may not be your experience, but if it is, or if it's close to yours, I'd like to give some words of counsel here to encourage you. And look, it's nothing but good news, folks. It's nothing but good news. The beauty of this system, the life plan system that I lay out in the book, which if you haven't read, I hope you do, Joy on Purpose. It's on Amazon. You can get a free PDF at upwardthought.org if you'd like, if you prefer to check it out there first. The beauty of the system is it's infinitely extensible and it's infinitely reducible. So it's like a line that goes on forever in either direction. And there are reasons for that are beyond the scope of this. But the point is, if you're overwhelmed with anything in life, the path through that is to find a way to chop up the problem. So you can get an immense amount of wisdom out of the Rocky movies. And in Rocky 4, there's a scene where Rocky's going up against the Russian, and one of his coaches is shouting, "Chop him down, Rock, chop him down," like a giant tree, you know. You got to chop this thing into pieces. To get mythical here, there are many names for this serpent of chaos figure in myth. And what you'll find is in the stories, it doesn't matter where it comes from, there's this common thread of chopping that snake up. It's a snake that eats its own tail. It's an infinite loop. It's something that goes on forever and ever. And the issue is that humans, we can't deal in infinity. And so when you're overwhelmed, and it doesn't matter, that might seem so airy and ethereal to talk about something like the snake of chaos. It doesn't matter what we're talking about in life. Like maybe your car keeps breaking down and everything seems wrong, and it's a very specific thing at your car that's overwhelming you. Well, chop up the snake. You have to find a way to chop up the problem into smaller pieces. Because what everything comes down to, the purpose of it all, is to inform what you will do next. And we're going to come back to this theme. It's a central theme. The purpose of it all is to figure out what you will do next and to find sufficient reasons to do it. That's it. What you do right now is the only thing that you can actually choose. You can think about an awful lot from the future, and you can think about an awful lot from the past, but you can only act right now. So the purpose of all of it is to figure out what to do and why to do it. That's it. So you have to chop down big infinite problems. Okay? So if you read Joy on Purpose, and that's your big infinite problem, is you say, well, you've laid out this life plan idea exceptionally well, Rob. I mean, tremendously well. But I don't even know where to start. I mean, I'm thinking in my head, to do what you lay out in the book, I have to sit and write, a 50-page life plan. And I don't even know if I've even written a half a page before. Well, you missed the part in the book that talks about chopping this down. And that's what I'm going to help you with by hitting it orthogonally from a different direction here. You just got to chop it down. There's a really practical way to do that, and I don't want to get prescriptive, but I'm just going to show you a specific example here if you hang on and give me the time to talk about this. There are only a few slides here. So I actually already talked about this, what's on this slide, but everything, the purpose of everything is what you do today and why you do it. That's it. That's the purpose of the life plan. The point is that life flows no matter what. Your life, it's like sand flowing through the hourglass, and there's nothing you can do to slow it down. There are things you can do to speed it up, which is really, you can throw the hourglass on the floor and shatter it and end it all. But there's nothing you can do to slow it down. It's going to flow no matter what. So the question is, what are you getting in exchange for the sand flowing through? And that's the rub. That makes all the difference. That explains all the difference that there is between any two people, is what they do with the sand as it's flowing by. You can't slow time down. You can only choose what you're going to do with it. And that time is today. It's always right now. And so what the life plan does is it gives you a machine, a process, whereby you can more intelligently select what you're going to do right now. And also one that gives you the maximal meaning or the strongest motivation for the thing that you choose. And so now all of a sudden you can do things that are much more valuable in the long term than if you weren't thinking about it intentionally. And you can have much greater strength and endurance in doing it, even if the thing really stinks that you have to do right now. Even if it's something you really don't want to do, you can still do it. You have the power. It's kind of like a He-Man sword, right? So become the master of your universe. The beauty of this is that, as I mentioned, it's infinitely reducible. Why is that? Well, there are two chunks to the life plan. One is planning and one is execution. This is broken down in the book. Execution can't be partial. I mean, you got to do the thing. You can't do it halfway. But planning can be as partial as you'd like. Now, ideally, it will be the best that could possibly be planned, right? It'll be perfect. However, it's a process to learn how to do this. I mean, you don't jump on a bike for the first time in your life and go compete in the Tour de France, right? You got to slap those training wheels on there. And the point is, if you're not having fun, if it's overwhelming, you're probably not going to keep doing it. You'll never get to the point where you can ride a bike. I know a person who is an adult and then some, and she still doesn't know how to drive because she got spooked when she was learning and she never tried again. So chop that snake down into a bite-sized piece and eat it up. You can make your life plan as brief as you can handle right now. And that's exactly what you should do. Because here's the magic. If you put a tiny little bit of effort into this, you're still going to get something out of it. And whatever effort you put into creating and living a life plan, I promise you, you will get more out of it than you put in. It's like a magic machine. Everything is better on the other side. So the more you get at this, and it doesn't matter how small you start, the more you get at it, the more you'll get out of it. So here's my prescribed advice. So feel free to modify this any way you choose, but this is just slapping this down. If you've got no clue how to begin, here's how to begin, okay? Step number 1, choose a segment of your life. So you see how we're chopping down? I got to write a plan for my whole life. My goodness, I need to take 10 years off of work and get 50 reams of paper and bang this thing out. No. Just pick a segment. Now, what are some segments of life? And you can and should think about what yours are in your life. But for me, maybe home, life, work. Maybe I've got a side project going, whatever. Pick something. And then, I'm going to show you a specific example from my own life here. So hang on for that. And then step 2 is choose 2 time frames. There's a reason for this. But the first time frame is going to be short. How short? You decide, man. It could be a day. It could be a week. It could be a month. You pick. Don't do longer than a month, though. Okay? And then pick a long term. Now, what's that long term going to be? Again, you pick it. It could be your whole life. It could be like, this is where I want to be when I die. Okay? It could be a decade, which for some of you, that's even longer than... Sorry. You gotta, life's so serious. Sometimes you gotta joke about the serious things. It could be a year, but I wouldn't make it shorter than a year. Okay? So long-term time frame and a short-term time frame. Why are we doing that? Well, I'll tell you. It turns out that there's massive power to setting this time frame, even if you do nothing else except set goals for a time frame, which is where we're going next. Just the act of thinking about where you want to be under the constraint of a certain time frame, I promise you, you are going to think and act differently. You're going to. Because now you have an orientation. It's like pulling out your compass when you're hiking and just glancing at it for a minute. You now have more of a frame of reference than you did before. And it's absolutely going to change how you think, feel, and act. And it's going to make it much easier for you to think, feel, and act more reconciled to what you feel is actually important. Okay? Now, what you do when you pick a short and a long-term time frame, what you're doing is you're setting basically the left and right bounds. And then you're going to work your way in towards the middle over time. Over time, not right now, but you're going to fill that in later. It's like if you're playing, I don't know how many video games are like this anymore, but there was a game called StarCraft. It was really popular like 20 years ago or something. And in that game, there was a map, and you had to explore the map, and you couldn't really see what was in the middle. You kind of knew where you were headed, and you definitely knew where you were starting, but the middle was covered. You couldn't see it. But once you explored it, then you could see it. So obviously your plans would take form the more of the map that you explored, the more detail you'd have, and the more you could strategize, right? So it's exactly like that. You start at the beginning. You can see the greatest amount of detail for what applies for today. You look way ahead into the future, and then over time you work out the middle. The working out the middle, see the book, read the book for that. In this presentation, we're just talking about how to get this kicked off. Tiny baby step. Okay, the first tiny baby step. So now you've got 2 time frames. And what I'd like you to do is think about 2. You only need 2. If you get more, that's fine. But again, if you're overwhelmed, you want to chop down the snake, not make it longer. Choose 2 goals for each time frame. So in the book, I talk about goals. I won't rehash that here. There's a whole chapter on it. You can read that chapter. For the short term, and only for the short term, I want you to enumerate tasks that you believe will accomplish your goals. So you got 2 goals. For each of those 2 goals, make a list of what you need to do to be the most confident that that thing is going to be accomplished. Got it? Now, you've got a list of tasks. You want to sort them in priority order, meaning put the thing that makes the greatest difference first. Now, obviously, there might be prerequisite things or time-limited things. Okay, fine. Fine-tune it. Put things in the order they need to be. But your priority is to get the biggest things done first. That means that any other thing that you have to do to complete the biggest thing becomes the highest priority, right? Obviously. Again, this is spelled out clearly in the book, but this is a helper to get you going. Okay, so before we move on, you might be thinking, wait, but we didn't set any tasks for the long term. That's right. So what's the point of thinking about the long term and setting goals? Like I said before, just the act of thinking about where you want to be in that long-term time frame and setting goals to measure that will affect how you think and act. Now later, as you flesh out the middle, you should absolutely set tasks. I should say enumerate tasks. So discover and design the tasks that you believe will get you there. But we're chopping the snake down, okay? This is all very much like working out or eating right. You start as small as you need to keep going. But the point is that as you do it, you'll absolutely accumulate a mountain of reasons to keep going. You're going to experience the benefits, and that will motivate you to do even more. The other thing is, like riding a bike, those training wheels, eventually you'll be able to take them off. And you might fall down and skid your knees a couple of times, but you're going to learn. And here's the thing about riding a bike, is once you know how to do it, you don't have to think about it anymore. What began as this very complicated, even stressful, intense task that had to be really intentional and occupied tons of your brain, and you could really get hurt, it becomes the most natural thing in the world, and you never have to think about it again. That's how the life plan is. Over time, it becomes that, right? So it has to be intense and explicit at first, but all that fades away the more you put into it over time. All right. So now I'm going to give you a specific example from my own life. So let's say I'm looking out across my life and I say, well, I need to segment this. So I'm going to choose outdoor yard tasks. I have a lot of those for various reasons, okay? So what are my goals? My goals are reduce time and hoses for watering. We are in a position where we live, it really doesn't rain enough to have anything. So we have tons and tons of garden hoses. We have to lug them all across our 5 acres to water things. And it's really, really annoying. And the hoses get left out, and invariably they get run over or cut up by a lawnmower or something. And it's just a huge waste of time and money. So we'd like to get to the point where we can water most of the trees by turning a dial, manual water timer, okay? And then for everything that can't be done that way, we want to have closer access to the water so we don't need these mile-long hoses to lug across the property, okay? So our goal is to be able to reach everything with a manual water timer, and anything that can't be reached with that to be able to reach it with just one hose. You can measure that goal. It's specific. I will know absolutely if we get there or not. And the benefit of that descriptive goal is now I can specifically enumerate what I believe will accomplish it. If you get a good goal, it's going to basically tell you how to accomplish it. Okay? It'll be very powerful in helping you design that plan. Okay, another thing is we got some baby turkeys in the spring, and they're big enough that they need a place to live. So they're in their little confinement to keep them safe and keep them in the right temperature and everything while they're really young, and now they're getting into adolescence and they need a place to live. And then I also need to refill the firewood stores. We burn wood, and so I have places and I have a set quantity that I need to make sure we're good for each winter. All right, so those are my goals. So now what are the tasks? And I organized this into week by week because that's a good way for me to think about the prioritization. Now, as soon as the start whistle blows and I start going through these things, they're going to change in terms of when I get them done based on circumstances that are beyond my control and based on new information. And that's okay, right? Whenever something like that shifts, you have to adjust along with it. That's fine. Now, before we get into this, you might say, this is the last slide, you might say, well, where's your long-term goal? Yeah, I didn't bother with that. I just want to focus on the short-term one, okay? I want to keep this presentation short. I think you can figure that out for yourself, okay? But they're going to be big things like, I want my family to be successful people with their own family. I want them to be happy and have their own family. Okay, cool, right? Things like that. Okay, so the way I organized this was in terms of urgency, which this is one reason I like this example. It's basically what's going to die first. That's how I sorted this, is like what dies first, right? Now, I put the firewood at the end because we've got quite a bit of time before it's going to get cold. And so that's the last priority. Okay, great. I just need to get that done before it gets cold. All right. And then the second to last priority is to get the water lines for the west and northwest spots that I've got picked out. Why are those second to last? Because they would provide the least benefit for this year. We've actually already taken care of some problems over there, and even if we have to do it the old way with lugging out the hoses, that's not as big of a deal as long as we get everything else done. Okay. Now, I'm going to flip to talking about the first in line. It's a collection of things that all involve the same stretch of property. It's the eastern fence line of our property, because all three of these water lines are going to run down that fence line. And now I have to sort of reveal some details here. Most of these tasks are actually already done, but I did this. I made this list a couple of weeks ago, and I'm in the process of checking these things off. And that's relevant because I'm going to give you the details of some shifts that happened, so you can see this in real time, how it looks. But when I was looking over the list of all things and I began to sort it, I said, well, I've got a bunch of trees. We had some atrociously hot, dry weather for weeks. And I said, these trees are going to die if I don't get this drip line going. So that became priority number one. And as I looked over that, I said, well, these 3 lines would be stronger if I zip tied them together because it's just black poly pipe. So I thought, well, if I just take a little extra work, I can economize with scale and zip tie these things down the line and put in little pegs in the ground and zip tie them to that for stability so no one kicks these things out of the way because they're drip lines, so I don't want them to move off the plant. And so I knocked all this out over a week or 2, and that's the other thing, is that your initial estimations for how long these things are going to take are very likely to be wrong. That's okay. The most important thing is the priority, and the duration of the task starts to matter when it affects the priority. Like maybe something is a high priority if you can get that thing done in 2 days, but if it took 2 months, you'd have to put it lower down the list. Okay, but in the middle, it's sort of more of a gray area. It probably doesn't matter how specific how accurate you are on the time estimate, right? So anyway, the second collection of priorities consisted of a line of bushes that I could more easily water by hand. So they were a lower priority than the long stretch of trees that took a lot more time to do. You see how that works? Because you should always be operating for greater future efficiency. Every single time you lock in greater efficiency, it cascades benefit through time. It's like interest that keeps paying. So just yesterday, actually, we did a mulch day, and I went out with my 3 oldest boys, and there's a wood mill not too far away that unfortunately is closing this year that has a deal that if you're local, they'll let you have as much mulch as you want for free. You just have to shovel it, which is ridiculous. It takes tons of time, but it's still a really good deal. So we used little boy power and got that dump trailer filled up a couple of times. Okay. So why were my boys able to work, to shovel mulch for 6 hours straight? Well, because it's not the first time they've done hard work, right? We put them to work here. And at first it's brutal. It seems like an utter waste of time to get little kids to learn how to work, to teach them how to do things, not just working hard, but learning actual skills like how do you hammer a nail or whatever. But it's a beautiful thing when you hand your son a chicken and say, you need to butcher this thing. And he says, okay. And he goes and takes care of it. You don't have to watch, he can handle it. Right. So those residuals, they pay off. And we're not just talking about kids, but all through life, you should think about what kind of investments you can make for greater future efficiency. And again, this example is great for that, because if we spend 12 hours watering all of our trees on a go, it might be 20 for all the trees we planted on our property. There are reasons for this, but if it takes 20 hours and I can reduce that down to walking outside and turning a dial, that's an enormous time savings, right? It's an enormous time savings. There's also ways that you can save money. I've talked in other materials about buying freezers and using a freezer to navigate differences in meat prices. And so you can take advantage of sales and fill your freezer, or you can find a farmer and buy half a cow. And it might be half the price of the store meat, right? So those efficiencies, they pay out when you do the calculations and choose wisely. All right. So I think I've gone through this. And then, of course, the turkeys need a place to live, right? So what actually ended up happening, almost all of these things are done as of today. So what ended up happening was the firewood ended up moving up to about here in the priority list. Why? Because a friend of mine very graciously not only offered but insisted to help me get firewood. And so he had a specific time he needed to do that because of his work situation. And so we accommodated that. It's the least we could do. And so we got firewood about here in the priority order. Okay. And that ended up being great because having one extra man who's a hardworking dude ended up making that go a lot faster. And so even though it wasn't the highest absolute priority, it was wise to do it when we did because it took a lot less time and a lot less likelihood of getting injured. So, because it's hard work. Anyway, that's your specific example. So, are summer yard tasks an enormous piece of my life? Well, in terms of the work that goes into it, yes. In terms of the sort of pie chart of everything, no, it's kind of a small slice. But it's intricate and there's a lot going on. And just setting the goals and enumerating the tasks and prioritizing them, I never have to wonder what the next thing is. And you know what the magic trick of this is? I have this long list, which I've actually vastly simplified this for the example. There's a lot more going on outside, but these are the main things. Here's the beauty. I am never, ever stressed out about what I need to do outside because I know what I need to do. I know why I need to do it. I know when it needs to be done by. And here's the kicker. I know that if I'm doing my best to get the top thing done, I'm doing my best for all of it. That is beautiful. So the rest of it just melts out of my mind. It's on a list. I don't have to worry about it. The only thing I have to worry about is the highest priority thing that's not done yet. And so when I've got a free minute, I look at that and I say, can I move this forward right now? And if the answer is no, because say I have to go work on mulch for 6 hours and I'm not up to it for whatever reason, maybe I don't have 6 hours, or maybe it's at the end of the day, I don't have the energy left, the strength and nutrients to tackle something that takes 6 hours of physical labor. Well, then I look down the list and I say, okay, but I know all the other important things. Can I go knock out something like what else needs to be done on the turkey coop? Okay, I can go prime a window frame. I can go do that. That'll take me 10 minutes. And it's funny because in practice, when you do this, it sounds like so much thinking about things, so much work, so many extra things. It's none of those things. It's the opposite of all those things. This is absolutely the easiest way to live. You get so much out of so little. And the benefits just keep rolling in. Like, what would a life be where you're never stressed out ever? Ever. I cannot tell you the last time I was stressed out. Actually, I can. The only time I can remember being stressed out in like the last 5+ years, and if any of you know anything about me, like every day of my life would probably stress you out. The last time and the only time I can remember being stressed in the last 5 years is when I had to castrate baby pigs for the first time. And that was just like a little, the needle just moved a tiny bit off of zero. Just boop, that's it. Because I didn't want to hurt pigs, right? And I wasn't 100% sure of what I was doing because you can only learn so much from videos on that, right? But within 5 seconds, that was gone too, and we were good to go. So imagine a life where only castrating pigs stresses you out. It too can be yours. All right, I hope this helps. Please don't be stressed out about applying joy on purpose. That's the opposite of the intent. If you get stuck, reach out to me. My email is upwardthought@gmail.com. I'm very happy to help in any way that I can. And what you have to remember is that if you're hung up on something, someone else is too. And so it's not a waste of time for you to raise the question because it helps me make materials like this. And, we could even have, whatever. So the conversations we have, they help other people too. So don't hesitate. And I wish you success as you apply those things.